I am Veronique, 28 years old, and until last year, I was just an ordinary girl from Boston with modest dreams and disappointed parents. They always thought I would amount to nothing special. Little did they know that my wedding would become the talk of the nation, featuring a helicopter landing and a $12 billion CEO as my groom. If you think that sounds unbelievable, stick around for the full story. Where are you watching from today? Hit like and subscribe. Before we dive into how my trash wedding became a national sensation. Growing up in the prestigious neighborhood of Beacon Hill in Boston, my childhood was defined by achievement and expectations. My parents, Harold and Diana Matthews, were respected academics who built their careers on excellence and reputation. My father was the head of the economics department at a prestigious university, while my mother was an accomplished neurologist at Massachusetts General Hospital. Their credentials and connections made them pillars of Boston society, and they expected nothing less than perfection from their children. My older brother Adrian became a corporate attorney by 26, and my younger sister Natalie was accepted to medical school at 22. They were the golden children who fulfilled my parents' expectations perfectly. Then there was me, the middle child, who seemed to march to the beat of a different drum from the moment I could walk. While my siblings excelled in science and mathematics, I found joy in arts, literature, and creating experiences. I would transform our backyard into magical worlds for neighborhood plays during summer breaks. I organized fundraisers for my high school that broke previous records. Yet instead of seeing my unique talents, my parents considered my creative inclinations as frivolous and disappointing. I can still hear my mother sighing, "Veronique, when will you focus on something substantial?" Whenever she found me sketching event layouts or designing invitations. My father was more direct, often saying, "Creative careers are for those who cannot excel academically," despite my consistent A grades in subjects that interested me. When I announced my decision to study event management and communications instead of the pre-law track they had planned, my father did not speak to me for 2 weeks. The silent treatment was his preferred method of expressing disappointment. My mother took a different approach, reminding me daily about successful lawyers and doctors in our family, as if my choice would somehow break a sacred legacy. Despite their disapproval, I graduated with honors and landed a position at Elite Occasions, a boutique event planning agency in Boston that catered to corporate clients and wealthy individuals. Within 3 years, I became their lead coordinator for high-profile events, earning a reputation for attention to detail and creative vision. My clients loved me, my boss valued me, but my parents continued to view my career as a temporary phase before I would come to my senses. During a family dinner celebrating Adrian's partnership announcement at his law firm, my mother introduced me to her friends as still figuring things out with her little party planning job, despite the fact that I had just orchestrated a $5 million product launch for a major tech company. When I politely corrected her and mentioned the scope of my work, she quickly changed the subject. The message was clear: my achievements did not count in their world. The constant dismissal of my choices created a deep conflict within me. Part of me desperately wanted their approval, while another part grew increasingly resentful of their narrow definition of success. I began avoiding family gatherings, making excuses about work commitments that my parents never questioned, because they did not consider my job serious enough to be truly demanding. My salvation during these difficult times came in the form of Jasmine Chen, a graphic designer I met while organizing a charity function. Unlike my family, Jasmine saw my talent immediately and became my fiercest supporter. We bonded over being creative professionals with families who did not understand our passions. "Your parents are stuck in an outdated paradigm," Jasmine told me during one of our Friday night wine sessions after I received yet another passive-aggressive email from my mother about a distant cousin's medical school acceptance. Success does not have only one definition. With Jasmine's encouragement, I finally moved out of my parents' subsidized apartment into a small but charming place of my own in Cambridge. It was not in a prestigious neighborhood, and the building did not have a doorman like the one my parents had insisted I needed for safety, but it was mine, paid for entirely with my own earnings. My tiny apartment became my sanctuary, decorated with memories from events I had organized and thank you notes from satisfied clients. It was in this space that I began to build a sense of identity separate from my parents' expectations. Every successful event, every client compliment, and every independent decision became a brick in the foundation of my self-confidence. By 28, I had achieved a comfortable level of professional success and personal independence. I had friends who valued me, a career that fulfilled me, and enough distance from my family to maintain my sanity. But the desire for my parents' approval remained a quiet ache in the corner of my heart, a childhood wound that had never fully healed. Little did I know that the next event on my professional calendar would not only change my personal life forever, but would also force my parents to finally see me for who I truly was, rather than who they had always expected me to be. The Harrington Foundation was a new client for elite occasions, and landing their annual charity gala was considered a significant achievement for our agency. The foundation was known for its generous contributions to educational initiatives and technological innovation in underserved communities. As the lead coordinator assigned to the project, I approached it with my usual professionalism and attention to detail, unaware that this particular event would alter the course of my life. My first meeting was scheduled at the foundation's temporary offices in downtown Boston. I arrived 20 minutes early, portfolio in hand, prepared to present my initial concepts to the foundation director. The reception area was minimally furnished, which I found surprising for such a well-funded organization. While waiting, I noticed a man in jeans and a simple button-up shirt, struggling with the coffee machine in the small kitchenette, visible from my seat. Following my instinct to be helpful, I approached him. The trick is to hold the button down for 3 seconds before pressing start, I said, demonstrating the technique. The machine hummed to life, and he gave me a grateful smile. "You've saved me from caffeine withdrawals," he said, extending his hand. "I'm James. Veronique Matthews," I replied, shaking his hand. "I'm waiting to meet with the foundation director about the upcoming gala." "What a coincidence," he said with a subtle smile. "So am I, in a way." We chatted casually about Boston and the foundation's work while waiting for his coffee to brew. I found him surprisingly easy to talk to, unpretentious and genuinely interested in my thoughts about event planning. When the receptionist finally called my name, James wished me luck with a warmth that felt sincere. The receptionist led me to a conference room where several people were already seated. She introduced the marketing director, the community outreach coordinator, and the communications manager. Then, to my shock, James walked in and took the seat at the head of the table. "I believe you've already met James Harrington, the CEO of Harrington Technologies and founder of the Harrington Foundation," the receptionist said with a knowing smile. My face must have betrayed my surprise, because James grinned and said, "Sorry about that. I find people speak more freely when they do not know my title." James Harrington, the tech genius who had built a software empire worth billions from his college dorm room. The philanthropist who had donated millions to education initiatives. The notoriously private CEO who rarely gave interviews and avoided the social circuit, despite being one of the wealthiest individuals under 40 in America. And I had just taught him how to use a coffee machine. Despite my embarrassment, the meeting proceeded smoothly. I presented my ideas for the gala, focusing on creating an experience that would highlight the foundation's achievements while encouraging further donations. Throughout my presentation, James asked insightful questions that demonstrated a genuine interest in creating a meaningful event rather than just a flashy display of wealth. "I like your approach, Veronique," he said when I concluded. "You understand that we want to celebrate our community partners, not just impress donors with expensive decorations. Most event planners miss that distinction." Over the following weeks, I worked closely with the foundation team to bring the gala to life. James was surprisingly involved in the process, attending most planning meetings and offering suggestions that were thoughtful rather than demanding. Unlike many wealthy clients who insisted on extravagance for its own sake, James preferred elegance with purpose. During one late-night planning session, when most of the team had gone home, James and I found ourselves discussing the personal stories of scholarship recipients who would be speaking at the event. "This is why I started the foundation," he said, his passion evident. "Technology opened doors for me, and I want to create those same opportunities for kids who might otherwise be overlooked." "That's what drew me to event planning," I admitted. "Not the glamour, but the opportunity to create moments that matter, that might change someone's life." He looked at me with newfound interest. "Most people assume I enjoy these events for the networking or publicity. They rarely understand it's about the impact." "Most people see what they expect to see," I replied, thinking of my parents. "But not you," he said. "You see beyond the surface." The night of the gala arrived, and despite a last-minute catering crisis and a temperamental audio system, the event was a tremendous success. The scholarship recipients' stories moved many wealthy donors to increase their pledges, and the foundation's innovative programs received well-deserved recognition. As the evening wound down, James found me checking final details with the staff. "You did an exceptional job, Veronique," he said. "This wasn't just a successful fundraiser, it was a meaningful experience for everyone involved." His compliment meant more to me than the praise I had received from other high-profile clients. Perhaps because he seemed to recognize the intention behind my work, rather than just the execution. "I have an early meeting tomorrow," he continued, "but I'd like to discuss some other potential events for the foundation. Would you have time for coffee this weekend? Unless that's unprofessional." Something in his tone suggested this might not be strictly business, but his approach was respectful and unassuming. "I think coffee would be fine," I replied, surprising myself with my composure. Professional relationships often develop over caffeine in this industry. "Excellent," he smiled. "Since you already know how to operate complicated coffee machines, you can pick the venue." We met at a small, unassuming cafe in Cambridge, far from the upscale establishments where business meetings typically occurred. James arrived wearing jeans and a sweater, looking more like a graduate student than a billionaire CEO. We talked for hours, beginning with foundation business, but quickly moving to personal interests, childhood memories and perspectives on everything from literature to technology ethics. I learned that beneath his success, James was in many ways a lonely person. His meteoric rise in the tech world had isolated him from authentic connections. People either wanted something from him or placed him on a pedestal that prevented real friendship. "That's why I appreciated how you treated me when we first met," he confessed. "You were just helping someone with a coffee machine, not calculating how to impress a potential business connection." "I probably would have been more nervous if I had known who you were," I admitted. "Exactly," he said. "And that would have been a shame." As our coffee meeting extended into lunch and then an impromptu walk along the Charles River, I realized that despite our different backgrounds, we shared fundamental values and perspectives. James valued authenticity over status, purpose over profit, and genuine connection over social advantage. The qualities my parents had dismissed in me were precisely what James found most appealing. At the end of our day together, James asked if he could see me again, this time explicitly, not for foundation business. I said yes, beginning a journey that neither of us could have anticipated. James and I began dating quietly, away from public scrutiny and media attention. He was intensely private about his personal life, having learned early in his career that fame complicated authentic relationships. I appreciated this approach as it allowed us to get to know each other as people rather than as a billionaire and an event planner. Our dates were often simple and thoughtful rather than extravagant. James preferred intimate restaurants where he knew the owners and could dine without interruption to exclusive clubs where he would be recognized. We spent weekends hiking in the White Mountains, visiting small art galleries, or simply cooking dinner at his surprisingly modest townhouse in Cambridge. "People expect me to live in a mansion with helicopter pads and indoor pools," he explained when he first invited me over. "But why would I want to rattle around in a space designed to impress people I do not care about?" His home was comfortable and tastefully furnished, but not ostentatious. The only truly extravagant feature was his home office filled with cutting-edge technology and multiple monitors, where he sometimes worked late into the night on new projects. As our relationship deepened, James gradually introduced me to his inner circle. His chief operating officer, Mira, had been with him since the company's early days, and she initially regarded me with suspicion. "James needs people who appreciate him for himself, not his resources," she told me bluntly during our first meeting. "I hope you're that kind of person because he deserves nothing less." I was interested in James before I knew about his company, I assured her. "His success is a reflection of who he is, but it's not why I care about him." Over time, I earned Mira's trust and friendship. She confided that many people had tried to get close to James for personal gain, leaving him wary of new relationships. The fact that I maintained my own career and independence, rather than trying to integrate myself into his world, impressed her. James' business partner and childhood friend Thomas was more immediately welcoming. "I've never seen James so relaxed," he commented after we had all spent an evening together. "You bring out a side of him that disappeared when the company took off." As comfortable as I felt in James' world, the thought of introducing him to my family filled me with anxiety. My parents had a habit of dismissing my achievements and choices. How would they treat my relationship with James? Would they suddenly approve of me because of his status? The idea made me uncomfortable, yet I could not keep these significant parts of my life separate forever. After 3 months of dating, I finally invited James to Sunday dinner at my parents' home. I deliberately told them very little about him, describing him simply as someone important to me who worked in the tech industry. I wanted to observe their unfiltered reaction to him as a person before his identity coloured their perception. My mother, ever conscious of social impressions, prepared her standard dinner party menu rather than our usual family fare. My father selected wines from his collection that he typically reserved for colleagues he wished to impress. Their behaviour confirmed my suspicion that they would make an effort for anyone they perceived as professionally successful regardless of their significance to me. When James and I arrived, my parents' initial reaction was polite but subtly dismissive. They asked surface-level questions about his work without showing genuine interest in his responses. My father launched into a lengthy monologue about economic theory, clearly attempting to establish intellectual dominance. My mother inquired about his family background with the practiced skill of someone assessing social standing. James handled their thinly veiled interrogation with grace, answering questions directly without volunteering his accomplishments or status. When my father mentioned a recent article about these tech startups with unrealistic valuations, James simply nodded and said, "Investment bubbles are certainly a concern in any industry," rather than revealing that his company had revolutionized cloud computing and was valued at over $12 billion. The turning point came when my sister Natalie arrived late, apologizing profusely to Mr. Harrington for her tardiness. She had recognized James immediately from a technology conference where he had been the keynote speaker. "James Harrington," my father repeated, his tone shifting dramatically. "Of Harrington Technologies." "Yes, that's me," James confirmed simply. The transformation in my parents was both immediate and disturbing. My father, who moments before had been condescendingly explaining market forces to James, now leaned forward with newfound respect, asking eager questions about investment opportunities. My mother, who had been subtly interrogating James about his background, began mentioning family friends who worked in technology fields, attempting to establish connections. Throughout this display, James maintained his unpretentious demeanor, but I could tell he noticed the change. He caught my eye across the table with a small, understanding smile that communicated volumes. He saw exactly what was happening, and he saw how it affected me. After dinner, when my mother pulled me into the kitchen, ostensibly to help with dessert, her true purpose became clear. "Why didn't you tell us who he was?" she whispered urgently. "We would have prepared differently. Your father could have invited the dean who has connections in the tech industry." "I wanted you to meet James for who he is, not for his company valuation," I replied. She looked genuinely confused. "But Veronique, who he is the founder of a major corporation. That's not something you hide." "It's not all he is," I insisted. My mother patted my hand condescendingly. "Well, I'm glad to see you're finally making smart choices. This relationship could open many doors for you." Her words stung more than any criticism she had ever leveled at me. In her view, my greatest achievement was attracting the attention of a wealthy man, not building my own successful career or being valued for my personal qualities. The rest of the evening continued in this uncomfortable vein, with my parents performing an elaborate show of interest and approval that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with James' status. When we finally left, I felt emotionally exhausted. "I'm sorry about that," I said as we drove away. "They weren't always like that. Actually, that's not true. They were always like that, just in the opposite direction with me." James reached over to take my hand. "You don't need to apologize for them, but I do understand some things about you better now. Your resilience, your authenticity, your desire to create meaningful experiences rather than just impressive ones. Those qualities developed in opposition to their values, and that's what makes you exceptional." His perception and acceptance brought tears to my eyes. Most people would have been impressed by their academic credentials and social connections. Most people haven't spent enough time with you to recognize true value when they see it, he replied. 2 months later, after a weekend trip to a small coastal town where we had walked the beach for hours, discussing our hopes and dreams, James proposed. The setting was private and meaningful, with no grand gestures or public displays, just an honest conversation about building a life together, followed by a beautiful vintage ring that had belonged to his grandmother. "I want to build something real with you," he said simply. "A life based on what matters to us, not what others expect." Station. I said yes, without hesitation, certain that I had found someone who saw and valued me completely. The prospect of planning our wedding filled me with both excitement and anxiety, knowing that my vision and my parents' expectations would likely collide once again, this time with even higher stakes. The day after our engagement, James and I began discussing our vision for the wedding. We sat on the balcony of his Cambridge townhouse, sharing ideas over morning coffee. "I want our wedding to reflect who we are, not what society expects from someone in your position," I said. "Something intimate and meaningful rather than a spectacle." James nodded in agreement. "I have attended enough corporate events disguised as weddings to last a lifetime. I would prefer to celebrate with people who genuinely care about us, rather than those who want to network or be seen." We envisioned a ceremony in a beautiful natural setting, perhaps in the Berkshires, where we had spent a wonderful weekend hiking. We thought about incorporating elements that reflected our values, like locally sourced food, sustainable decor, and donations to educational charities in lieu of gifts. The guest list would be limited to close friends and family who had supported our relationship. When I shared these preliminary ideas with my parents over lunch the following weekend, their reaction was immediate and overwhelming. "Absolutely not," my mother declared, setting down her fork with a sharp clink against the plate. "James is a prominent business figure. You cannot have some bohemian backyard wedding. What would people think?" "Which people?" I asked. "The ones we care about, or the ones you want to impress?" My father joined in, his tone reasonable, but his words cutting. "Veronique, you need to understand the social implications. This wedding represents not just your union, but an important business and social alliance. The Harrington name carries significant weight. We are thinking of booking the grand ballroom at the Blackstone Hotel," my mother continued as if I hadn't spoken. "We already called about availability. They can accommodate 500 guests easily." 500, I repeated, stunned. "We were thinking of 50 maximum." My parents exchanged a look that I recognized from childhood, the one that said I was being naive and difficult. "That won't do," my father stated firmly. "I have colleagues and connections who would be deeply offended if not invited. Your mother has already mentioned the engagement to several important families. You announced our engagement before we could," I asked, feeling a familiar sense of boundaries being crossed. "Of course we did," my mother replied. "News travels fast and we wanted to control the narrative." Over the following weeks, what should have been a joyful planning process became a battlefield. My parents created spreadsheets of essential guests that included people I had never met. They scheduled appointments with exclusive vendors without consulting me. They discussed wedding details at their social gatherings as if the decisions had already been made. When James and I selected a beautiful rustic venue in the Berkshires that could accommodate our small guest list, my mother actually cried. "You are throwing away a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," she said between theatrical sobs. "Do you know how many young women would dream of having the resources to create a truly spectacular wedding, and you want to get married in a glorified barn? It's a restored 19th century estate with beautiful gardens," I corrected her. "And yes, that's exactly what we want." The conflict escalated when we discussed the ceremony itself. James and I wanted something personal and authentic, with vows we would write ourselves and meaningful rituals that reflected our journey together. My parents pushed for a traditional church ceremony with all the expected elements, despite the fact that neither James nor I were particularly religious. "What will we tell Reverend Wilson?" my mother demanded. "He expects to officiate, as he has for every significant family wedding for 3 generations. Tell him we appreciate the thought, but have made other arrangements," I suggested. My father shook his head in disapproval. "This is about tradition and respect, Veronique. Your rebellious phase was tolerable when it only affected your career choices, but this wedding represents our family to the community." The breaking point came during a dinner at my parents' home, where they had invited their chosen wedding planner without informing me. The woman arrived with elaborate portfolios of floral arrangements, more suited to a royal coronation than the wedding James and I had discussed. "These centerpieces would be stunning at the Blackstone," the planner gushed, showing designs that must have cost thousands per table. "We haven't chosen the Blackstone," I reminded everyone for what felt like the 100th time. My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Don't be difficult, dear. Of course the Blackstone is the only suitable venue. Where else could we possibly accommodate the governor and his wife?" "The governor?" I looked at James, who appeared equally confused. "Why would the governor attend our wedding?" "Your father plays golf with his brother," my mother explained, as if this tenuous connection obviously warranted an invitation to our most personal day. The planner continued as if I hadn't objected, detailing elaborate ice sculptures, a 10-piece orchestra, and a champagne fountain. When she mentioned a horse-drawn carriage entrance, I finally lost my patience. None of this reflects what James and I want, I stated firmly. Our wedding will be intimate, meaningful, and aligned with our values, not a society spectacle. My father set down his drink with deliberate calm. Veronique, I do not think you understand. This is not just about what you want. This wedding is an important social and business opportunity for both families. No, Dad, a wedding is about two people committing to each other, not a networking event. My mother's face hardened. After everything we've done for you, all the opportunities and advantages we've provided, you cannot even do this one thing properly. I always knew your stubborn streak would be your downfall, but I never imagined you would embarrass us like this. Embarrass you by having a wedding that reflects our genuine values rather than social climbing. Do not be dramatic, my father cut in. Your mother simply means that your plans are inadequate for someone marrying into the Harrington name. The wedding you're describing sounds frankly like trash compared to what it should be. The word hung in the air between us. Trash. The culmination of a lifetime of never quite measuring up, of choices dismissed, of achievements minimized. I looked at James, who had been patiently observing the escalating tension, and saw a quiet anger in his expression that I had never witnessed before. Mr. and Mrs. Matthews, he said, his voice calm but firm. I respect that you want the best for your daughter, but I cannot sit here while you demean her vision for our wedding. Veronique has built a successful career creating meaningful events that focus on substance over spectacle. Those are precisely the qualities that made me fall in love with her, and they are the values upon which we intend to build our marriage. My parents were momentarily silenced by his intervention. They had become so accustomed to James' agreeable nature that this firm boundary caught them off guard. My mother recovered first. James, dear, we understand that you appreciate Veronique's creative spirit, but surely you recognize the importance of proper social presentation in your position. What I recognize, James replied, is that a wedding should reflect the couple, not societal expectations or business opportunities. We will not be inviting people we don't know to witness one of the most significant moments of our lives. Then perhaps we will not be able to attend either, my father said stiffly. His words hit me like a physical blow. Despite years of disapproval and criticism, I had never imagined they would refuse to attend my wedding. If that's your choice, I said, fighting back tears, I will respect it. But our wedding will proceed as we envision it, with or without your blessing. As James and I drove home that night, I finally broke down. Years of seeking approval, of trying to bridge the gap between their expectations and my authentic self, collapsed into wrenching sobs. James pulled the car over and held me as I cried. I'm so sorry, he whispered. No one should have to choose between parental approval and personal truth. Once my tears subsided, James looked at me thoughtfully. I have an idea that might seem unconventional, but hear me out. He told me about a television show called Wedding Dreams Come True that featured unique love stories and helped couples create meaningful celebrations. His company had recently sponsored an episode focusing on tech entrepreneurs who used their wedding to launch a scholarship fund. The producers are always looking for compelling stories, he explained. And ours, a love story that challenges expectations and focuses on authenticity over extravagance, might resonate with viewers. Plus, it would allow us to promote causes we believe in to a national audience. A television wedding, I said doubtfully. Wouldn't that be even more public than what my parents want? Yes and no, James replied. It would be public, but on our terms, sharing our actual values rather than presenting a facade. We could use the platform to highlight educational initiatives we both care about. And so, he added with a small smile, it might show your parents that our vision has merit, even if it doesn't match their expectations. I considered the idea as we drove home. There was something appealing about transforming our private battle into a public statement about authentic celebration. If people were going to talk about our wedding anyway, given James' public profile, why not control the narrative ourselves? Let's explore it, I finally said, but only if we can ensure the focus remains on our values, not on spectacle. James squeezed my hand. That's exactly what I love about you. Even now, your priority is meaning over appearance. Little did we know that this decision would escalate the conflict with my parents to unprecedented levels, while simultaneously creating an opportunity for healing that I could never have imagined. The offices of Wedding Dreams Come True were located in a converted warehouse in South Boston, with exposed brick walls covered in photographs of couples whose weddings had been featured on previous episodes. James and I sat in a comfortable meeting room with Sofia Rodriguez, the show's executive producer, discussing our vision and story. Let me get this straight, Sophia said, reviewing her notes. You want to showcase an intimate, values-driven wedding that challenges the expectation that wealthy couples must have extravagant celebrations. Exactly, I confirmed. We believe a wedding should reflect who the couple truly is, not their social or financial status. Sophia tapped her pen against her notepad thoughtfully. And you're comfortable discussing the conflict with your parents on the show, that tension between authenticity and social expectations is compelling television. I hesitated, considering the public nature of such disclosure. I don't want to portray them as villains. They believe they're acting in my best interest, even if their vision differs dramatically from mine. Of course, Sophia assured me. We don't do family drama for drama's sake. Our show focuses on the couple's journey and the meaning behind their choices. James leaned forward. We'd also like to use this platform to highlight the educational foundations we've both been involved with. Rather than spending hundreds of thousands on a single day, we're donating what would have been our wedding budget to scholarships for disadvantaged students. Sophia's eyes lit up. That's exactly the kind of story our viewers connect with. A celebration with purpose, not just pretty decorations. After several meetings and discussions of logistics, we signed the contracts to have our wedding featured on the show. The production team would document our planning process, the ceremony itself, and the impact of our charitable initiatives. In return, we maintained creative control over how our story was presented, ensuring it would be respectful to all involved while staying true to our vision. When the time came to inform my parents about our decision, I chose to meet them in person at their home. I arrived alone, wanting to have this conversation without James as a buffer. A television show, my mother repeated when I explained our plans. Her voice was quiet but trembling with anger. You would rather expose our family to public scrutiny than have a proper wedding. It's not about exposure, I explained. It's about celebrating authentically and using the opportunity to promote causes we believe in. My father paced the living room, his posture rigid with disapproval. Do you have any idea what this will do to our reputation? Our colleagues, our friends will see our daughter rejecting traditional values on national television. I'm not rejecting values, Dad. I'm embracing ones that matter to James and me: authenticity, generosity, purpose. This is because of him, isn't it? My mother accused. He's turned you against us, convinced you to embarrass your family for publicity. The unfairness of her accusation stung. This decision is mutual, and it's about creating a celebration that reflects who we are. James has never wanted publicity. He's one of the most private people I know. This isn't about attention, it's about meaning. Well, we will not participate, my father declared. If you insist on turning your wedding into some kind of statement, you will do so without us. Despite anticipating this reaction, hearing the words spoken aloud pierced my heart. I hope you'll reconsider, I said quietly. Not for the show, but because I'd like my parents at my wedding. Then have a proper wedding, my mother countered. Cancel this television nonsense and allow us to help you plan a celebration worthy of your fiancé's position. I can't do that, Mom. This is our day, our commitment, our future. It needs to begin on our terms. I left my parents' house that day with a heaviness in my chest, but also a newfound resolve. For years, I'd sought their approval, adjusted my behaviours, and minimized my own desires to please them. This pattern had to end somewhere, and apparently my wedding would be the breaking point. The production schedule moved forward quickly. Sophia and her team filmed segments about our relationship history, our vision for the wedding, and our charitable foundation plans. We chose a beautiful estate in the Berkshires, with sweeping mountain views for the ceremony, limiting our guest list to 50 people who had genuinely supported our relationship. Instead of expensive floral arrangements, we worked with a sustainable local farm to create seasonal displays that would later be replanted in community gardens. Rather than a 7-course gourmet meal, we partnered with a farm-to-table restaurant that employed and trained former foster youth. Every element of our wedding was designed to reflect our values and create positive impact beyond the day itself. As filming progressed, the story of our wedding began generating buzz in the media. A preview segment featuring our scholarship initiative received positive coverage, and several prominent publications ran features on the billionaire CEO having a mindful wedding. The narrative was largely supportive, highlighting our choice to prioritize meaning over extravagance. 2 weeks before the wedding, I received an unexpected call from my sister Natalie. "Have you seen the Boston Globe today?" she asked without preamble. "No, why? There's an article about your wedding." They interviewed Dad. My stomach dropped. "What did he say?" "Nothing good," Natalie admitted. "He spoke about family traditions and proper social conduct. The subtext was clear: he thinks you're making a mistake. I found the article online, my hands shaking as I scrolled through it. My father had presented himself as the reasonable voice of tradition against his daughter's rebellious choices. He spoke of appropriate celebrations for people of certain standing and expressed disappointment in the public spectacle our wedding had become. What hurt most was his final quote: "Sometimes young people reject wisdom in their quest for individuality, but I trust my daughter will eventually recognize the value of the traditions she is currently dismissing." The condescension in those words, the assumption that my choices stemmed from immaturity rather than genuine values, reopened wounds I thought had begun to heal. James found me staring at my laptop, tears streaming down my face. "They really think I'm doing this to rebel or to hurt them," I said, showing him the article. "They can't imagine that these choices reflect who I actually am." James read the article, his expression darkening. "Would it help if I spoke to them?" I shook my head. "They need to accept me as I am, not because my successful fiancé convinces them my choices have merit." As the wedding date approached, I received messages of support from unexpected sources. Former clients wrote to applaud our charitable focus. My colleagues at elite occasions sent a group letter expressing their pride in my stance. Even some of my parents' friends reached out privately to share their admiration for our authentic approach. These messages strengthened my resolve, but the absence of my parents continued to cast a shadow over what should have been an entirely joyful time. Despite everything, some part of me had hoped they would eventually come around, that their love for me would ultimately outweigh their attachment to social conventions. A week before the wedding, Natalie and Adrian came to see me together. "We're coming to the wedding," Adrian stated firmly, "regardless of what Mom and Dad decide." Their solidarity brought fresh tears to my eyes. "Won't that put you in a difficult position with them?" Natalie shrugged. "Maybe, but we're adults who can make our own choices, and we choose to support our sister on her wedding day." Their support eased some of the pain, but as the final days before the ceremony arrived, I had to accept that my parents would likely follow through on their threat to stay away from what they had dismissively called my trash wedding. The realization was heartbreaking, but also liberating. For the first time, I was fully choosing my own path without holding out hope for their approval. The television crew captured this emotional journey with sensitivity, focusing on the growth and clarity that emerged from the conflict rather than exploiting the family tension for drama. As Sophia had promised, the story being told was one of choosing authenticity and meaning, not a sensationalized family feud. The night before our wedding, as James and I walked the grounds of the estate where we would be married the next day, I felt a strange sense of peace descend. "Whatever happens tomorrow," I told him, "I know we're beginning our marriage exactly as it should be, honestly, authentically, and surrounded by people who truly support us." James kissed me under the stars, the mountain silhouette dark against the night sky. "That's all that matters," he agreed. "Everything else is just decoration." I woke at dawn on my wedding day, sunlight streaming through the windows of the estate's guest cottage where Ed spent the night. According to tradition, James and I had slept separately, though we had laughed about the quaintness of this custom given our modern relationship. Still, there was something special about the anticipation of seeing each other at the ceremony. The television crew arrived early, setting up equipment with quiet efficiency as I began my preparations. Jasmine was already there, arranging breakfast and keeping the atmosphere light with her infectious humour. James's sister Eliza arrived shortly after, bringing the simple bouquet of wildflowers and herbs I had chosen instead of exotic blooms. "How are you feeling?" Jasmine asked, as she helped me arrange my hair in loose waves rather than the formal updo my mother would have insisted upon. "Strangely calm," I admitted. "I thought I'd be more upset about my parents, but there's a clarity today I wasn't expecting." A producer knocked softly on the door. "Veronique, your siblings are here." "Hi, too." Natalie and Adrian entered, both looking slightly uncomfortable with the cameras, but determined to be present. Natalie embraced me tightly. "You look beautiful," she whispered, "radiant and completely yourself. Any word from Mom and Dad?" I couldn't help asking, though I already knew the answer. Adrian shook his head. "Not yet, but the day is young." I nodded, accepting this reality. "I'm glad you both are here. It means everything to me." As the morning progressed, the small estate became a hive of activity. The production team conducted brief interviews with guests as they arrived. James and his groomsmen prepared in another part of the house. The afternoon ceremony would be filmed from multiple angles, but with minimal interruption to the proceedings. An hour before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, a producer burst into the cottage, where I was putting the finishing touches on my simple but elegant dress. "Veronique, you need to see this," she said breathlessly, gesturing toward the window. I moved to look outside and gasped. A helicopter was descending onto the lawn at the far end of the property, its rotors whipping the grass into frenzied waves. This wasn't part of our plan. "Is that James?" I asked, confused. We had both arrived by car the day before. "No, he's still getting ready in the east wing," Jasmine confirmed, joining me at the window. We watched as the helicopter landed and the door opened. James emerged wearing his wedding suit, a wide smile on his face. "But if that's James, then who—" I began, turning to the producer in confusion. "A last-minute change of plans," she explained. "James arranged it this morning. He wanted to make a statement." The cameras were already capturing his dramatic arrival, which would certainly make for compelling television, but it seemed so out of character for my privacy-loving fiancé to orchestrate such a spectacle. My phone rang, displaying James's name. "What's going on?" I asked when I answered. "There's a helicopter and apparently you're in it, except you're also in the east wing." James laughed. "That's not me in the helicopter. I'm still getting ready with the guys, but I did arrange it. Look closer at who's getting out." I returned to the window and squinted at the figures emerging from the helicopter. My heart stopped when I recognized them, my parents. They were being greeted by Sophia, who was gesturing toward the house. They looked uncomfortable, but determined, my father straightening his tie nervously, my mother clutching her handbag with white knuckles. "James, how did you—" I couldn't even finish the question. "I didn't do much," he said. "I just made sure they knew exactly when and where to come if they changed their minds, and that they'd have a dramatic way to arrive. The decision to be here was entirely theirs." Tears blurred my vision. "I need to see them." "They're being brought to the garden alcove," James informed me, "away from the main setup so you can have some privacy before the ceremony." I hurried through the house camera crew, respectfully keeping their distance, though still filming from afar. In the small stone alcove, surrounded by climbing roses, my parents stood awkwardly looking out of place in this rustic setting despite their formal attire. When my mother saw me, her carefully composed expression cracked. "Veronique," she said, her voice catching. I stopped a few feet away, suddenly unsure. After months of conflict and hurt, what could possibly be said in these few minutes before my wedding? "You came," I stated simply. My father cleared his throat. "We realized we were about to make the biggest mistake of our lives," he said, his usual confidence subdued. "Missing our daughter's wedding over what ultimately are just details." "We saw the preview segment they aired last night," my mother added. "The one about your scholarship foundation. It was beautiful what you and James are doing. I hadn't known any footage had aired already." "You saw that?" My mother nodded. "The young woman who received the first scholarship, the one who wants to become an event planner like you, when she spoke about how you had mentored her." She paused, composing herself. "I realized I've never truly seen your work through anyone else's eyes before. I've been so fixated on what I thought success should look like that I missed the impact you're actually having." "We've been wrong," my father admitted, the words clearly difficult for him. "Not just about the wedding, but about so many things. Your career choices, your priorities. We measured success by such narrow standards." Their words were healing a wound so deep and long-standing that I hadn't realized how much pain I'd been carrying until I felt it beginning to lift. "When James called this morning," my mother continued, offering to send the helicopter if we had reconsidered. "James called you. This was news to me." My father nodded. "He said nothing would make you happier than having us here despite everything. He didn't pressure us or try to convince us we were wrong. He simply offered us a way to be present if we chose to be." "And you chose to be," I said softly. "We did," my mother confirmed. "Because ultimately, you're our daughter and we love you. We may not always understand your choices, but today we saw clearly that they come from a place of integrity and purpose. We're proud of you, Veronique." Those words, so long wished for and never expected, broke something open inside me. Tears flowed freely as I stepped forward and embraced them both. "The ceremony starts in 20 minutes, I said when we finally separated. "Will you walk me down the aisle, Dad?" His eyes glistened with uncharacteristic emotion. "It would be the honor of my life." As we made our way back to the preparation area, Sophia approached with a professional but excited expression. "Veronique, there's been a development. The network got wind of the helicopter arrival and your family reconciliation. They want to broadcast the ceremony live rather than as a recorded episode." "Live?" I repeated, surprised. "As in happening in real time for viewers across the country." "Exactly. Your story has generated tremendous interest, and the helicopter arrival was just the kind of unexpected moment that makes for compelling television. Of course, it's entirely your decision. I looked at my parents, who seemed alarmed at the prospect of such immediate public exposure. Would that make you uncomfortable? I asked them. To my surprise, my mother straightened her shoulders and said, "This is your day, Veronique. If broadcasting it live will help spread the message about your foundation and your values, then we support that decision." My father nodded in agreement, a new respect in his eyes that I had never seen before. "Let's do it," I told Sophia. "But make sure everyone knows what's happening. No surprises for any of our guests." The next half hour passed in a whirlwind of activity as the production team made the necessary adjustments for live broadcasting. Guests were briefed, camera positions were finalized, and sound checks were completed. Through it all, a sense of exhilarated anticipation built within me. What had begun as a private statement about authentic celebration had somehow transformed into a public declaration of values that might reach and inspire others. As the ceremony time approached, I stood with my father at the beginning of the path that would lead to the altar area, a beautiful natural clearing with the mountains as backdrop. The cameras were positioned discreetly, and a small red light indicated we were now live to viewers across America. "Ready?" my father asked, offering his arm. I took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready." The music began, a string quartet playing a composition James had written specifically for this moment. We began our walk toward the future, each step carrying me closer to the man who had helped me find the courage to be fully myself. James stood waiting, his expression a mixture of love and awe that made my heart soar. Beside him, Thomas served as best man, while Jasmine waited on my side as maid of honor. Our small gathering of truly significant people created an atmosphere of intimate authenticity that no grand ballroom could have provided. The officiant, a university professor who had mentored both James and me in different contexts, welcomed everyone to a celebration of love that honors substance over spectacle, meaning over materialism, and authentic connection over social convention. I saw my mother shift slightly in her seat at these words, but was gratified to notice a thoughtful expression replace her initial discomfort. James and I had written our own vows, simple but profound promises to support each other's authentic selves, to build a partnership based on mutual respect and shared purpose, and to use our resources and privileges mindfully to create positive change in the world. When it was my turn to speak, I looked directly into James's eyes, momentarily forgetting the cameras and audience. "James, you saw me completely when others only saw parts. You valued what makes me different, rather than trying to reshape me into someone more conventional. With you, I found the courage to live authentically, and in that authenticity, I found a happiness I never knew was possible. I promise to honor your truth as you have honored mine, to build with you a life of purpose and meaning, and to love you not for what you have achieved, but for who you are at your core." James's voice was steady but filled with emotion as he responded with his own vows. "Veronique, you came into my life when success had begun to feel empty. You reminded me that true wealth lies in authentic connection, in living according to one's values, in creating meaning rather than accumulating status. I promise to walk beside you as an equal partner, to celebrate your unique vision, to support your dreams as fervently as my own, and to build with you a life that measures success by the positive impact we create rather than the impressions we make." As we exchanged rings, simple bands that had been crafted from ethically sourced materials, I was struck by how perfect this ceremony felt. Not despite its simplicity, but because of it. Every element reflected our genuine values and relationships, rather than external expectations or societal pressure. After the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, and as we shared our first kiss as a married couple, James surprised me by whispering, "Ready for one more untraditional moment." Before I could ask what he meant, he turned to address our guests and the cameras. "Veronique and I want to take this opportunity to announce the official launch of the Matthews Harrington Educational Foundation. Rather than accepting wedding gifts or spending excessively on this celebration, we have endowed a $10 million foundation that will provide scholarships, mentorship, and resources to young people pursuing non-traditional career paths." A murmur of approval ran through the guests, and I noticed my father sitting up straighter, a new expression of genuine interest on his face. "Today," James continued, "we've awarded the first 10 scholarships to students who, like Veronique, have the vision to see beyond conventional definitions of success. These recipients will join us at the reception to share their dreams and aspirations with our guests." This had been planned, but what happened next was spontaneous. My father stood up, drawing all eyes to him. "If I may," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the mountain air, "Diana and I would like to announce our own contribution to the foundation. We've spent too many years defining success too narrowly, and in doing so nearly missed recognizing the extraordinary impact our own daughter has had through her unconventional choices. To support this important initiative and to publicly acknowledge our pride in Veronique and James, we are pledging $1 million to the foundation." Gasps and applause followed this announcement. I looked at my father in astonishment, seeing him truly differently for the first time. This wasn't just a gesture of financial support, but a public acknowledgement that his perspective had genuinely shifted. As James and I walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, the cameras captured not just a wedding, but a transformation of relationships, of perspectives, of definitions of success and celebration. What had begun as a private stand for authentic values had become a public affirmation that meaningful connection matters more than social convention, that true wealth lies in purpose rather than display, and that sometimes what others dismiss as trash contains the most genuine treasure of all. The reception following our ceremony maintained the intimate, meaningful atmosphere we had envisioned. Instead of a cavernous ballroom with hundreds of acquaintances, we gathered in the estate's renovated barn, which had been simply decorated with wildflowers, sustainable greenery, and warm lighting. Round tables encouraged conversation among our genuinely connected guests, while the farm-to-table meal celebrated local producers and the talented young chefs who prepared it. The television cameras continued to capture moments for the live broadcast, but in a respectful, unobtrusive manner that allowed natural interactions to flourish. The production team had mastered the art of being present without documenting our celebration rather than directing it. What made the reception truly special was the presence of the 10 scholarship recipients James had mentioned during the ceremony. These young people, ranging from 18 to 24 years old, had been selected for their innovative thinking, commitment to positive change, and pursuit of non-traditional career paths. Each had a unique story and vision that reflected the foundation's values. Maya, an aspiring sustainable event planner who had grown up in foster care, shared her dream of creating meaningful celebrations for children who rarely had birthdays acknowledged. Trevor, who had left a promising position at a prestigious law firm to develop educational technology for rural communities, spoke passionately about democratizing access to quality learning resources. Zara, a former refugee now studying ecological architecture, described her vision for culturally responsive, environmentally sustainable housing in underserved communities. I watched with profound satisfaction as my parents engaged genuinely with these remarkable young people. My father, who had always valued academic credentials and institutional prestige, listened intently as Devon explained how his non-traditional apprenticeship approach to artificial intelligence ethics had given him insights that conventional education might have overlooked. My mother, who had judged success by social standing and material acquisition, nodded appreciatively as Lucia described her community-based fashion initiative that employed and empowered immigrant women. "You've found extraordinary people," my mother commented when she joined me at the dessert table, which featured locally made pies instead of a traditional wedding cake. "Their passion is quite moving." "They remind me of myself in some ways," I admitted. People with visions that didn't fit conventional expectations, but with the potential to create meaningful impact. My mother touched my arm gently. "I see that now. I wish I had seen it sooner." "You're seeing it now," I said. "That's what matters." James approached with my father, both men looking more relaxed together than I had ever seen them. "Harold has been sharing some interesting perspectives on incorporating mentorship components into the foundation," James told me. My father nodded. "I've been thinking that academic advisors and industry professionals could form support networks for your scholarship recipients. Many of my colleagues would value the opportunity to guide young innovators, even those taking unconventional paths." The genuine interest in his voice, free from condescension or control, signaled a shift I had never thought possible. My father wasn't merely accepting our choices. He was engaging with them, contributing his own expertise while respecting the Foundation's core values. As the evening progressed, the live broadcast transitioned to include interviews with various guests, highlighting different aspects of our celebration and Foundation launch. Jasmine spoke eloquently about the importance of supportive friendships in helping people stay true to their authentic selves. Thomas shared insights about James' journey from success to significance. Even my siblings contributed thoughtful reflections on watching their sister forge her own path despite family pressure. When the producers asked my parents if they would be willing to share their perspective, I held my breath, uncertain how they would respond to such public exposure. To my surprise, they agreed readily. We came very close to missing one of the most important days in our daughter's life, my mother acknowledged on camera, because we were so fixated on appearances that we couldn't see the substance and meaning of what Veronique and James were creating. It took courage for them to stand firm in their values, my father added, and wisdom that frankly exceeded our own in many ways. I'm grateful they gave us the opportunity to reconsider our position. Their sincerity brought tears to my eyes. This public acknowledgement represented a more profound shift than I had dared to hope for when the day began. Later, as James and I shared our first dance to a song performed by a young musician who had received one of our foundation's first arts scholarships, I felt a sense of completion that went beyond the typical wedding day happiness. We had created a celebration that not only marked our commitment to each other, but also embodied our shared values and vision for the future. Happy, James murmured as we moved together. Beyond words, I replied. Not just because we got married, but because we did it our way with meaning and purpose. And somehow that authenticity created space for healing I never thought possible. Your parents have come a long way in a very short time, he observed. They have. I don't expect perfect understanding overnight, but today feels like a genuine new beginning. As the evening wound down, the broadcast concluded with a final segment featuring James and me sharing our hopes for the foundation and expressing gratitude to everyone who had supported our vision. The producer informed us that viewer response had been overwhelming, with social media buzzing about the billionaire CEO's meaningful wedding and donations already flowing in to support additional scholarships. You've started something significant, Sophia told us as the cameras finally stopped rolling. This wasn't just great television, it was a powerful statement about redefining success and celebration. After the last guests had departed and the production team had packed up their equipment, James and I found ourselves alone on the estate's terrace, looking out at the mountains silhouetted against the night sky. My parents had left earlier, my father surprising me with a genuine hug and my mother holding on a moment longer than usual, whispering, "We're so proud of you, Veronique. Truly proud." "What are you thinking about?" James asked, wrapping his arm around my shoulders. "How sometimes the things others dismiss as inadequate or even trash can actually be treasures," I replied. My parents called our wedding plans trash because they didn't fit their definition of success. But what we created today had more meaning, more impact, more genuine connection than anything their version could have provided. "It's about recognizing different forms of value," James agreed. "Your parents measured worth by social status and conventional markers. We measure it by authenticity, purpose, and positive impact. And now maybe they're beginning to see through our lens a bit. I think they are. That's the power of standing firm in your truth. Sometimes it doesn't just free you, it creates space for others to expand their perspectives too." We fell into comfortable silence, reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought us to this moment. What had begun as a painful conflict had transformed into an opportunity for growth, healing, and unexpected connection. By refusing to compromise our authentic vision, we had not only created a meaningful celebration, but had also sparked a shift in my family dynamics that I had long ago given up hope of experiencing. 6 months after our wedding, the change in my relationship with my parents continued to evolve in positive ways. The TV special had aired as a full episode, beyond the live ceremony becoming one of the network's most watched and discussed programs of the season. Its popularity had brought significant attention to our foundation, allowing us to expand the scholarship program more quickly than anticipated. My parents had become actively involved in the foundation's mentorship initiative, with my father connecting scholarship recipients to professional opportunities, and my mother hosting networking events that brought together traditional and non-traditional achievers in various fields. Their worldview hadn't changed completely overnight, but they were genuinely engaging with new definitions of success and value. James and I settled into married life with a shared commitment to maintaining authenticity in all aspects of our lives. His company continued to thrive, but we made conscious decisions about balancing work with personal priorities and using our resources to create meaningful impact rather than simply accumulating wealth or status. I continued my event planning career, now specializing in helping clients create celebrations that reflected genuine values rather than social expectations. The visibility from our wedding had brought numerous clients seeking meaningful rather than merely impressive events, allowing me to build a niche practice that aligned perfectly with my personal philosophy. Looking back on our wedding day and the conflict that preceded it, I realized that standing firm in our authentic vision had been the catalyst for transformation that extended far beyond our celebration. By refusing to compromise our values to meet others' expectations, we had created space for genuine connection, mutual respect, and expanded perspectives. The most valuable lesson I learned through this journey was that true worth often lies in what others dismiss or undervalue. My parents had called our wedding plans trash because they didn't fit conventional definitions of success and status. Yet by embracing our authentic vision despite their disapproval, we created something that ultimately proved more meaningful, impactful, and transformative than any traditional society wedding could have been. Sometimes the greatest treasures are found precisely where others see no value. Sometimes the most powerful statements are made by quietly standing firm in your truth rather than conforming to external expectations. And sometimes the people who have been most critical of your choices can become your most unexpected allies when they finally see the authentic value in your vision. Has there been a time in your life when you had to stand firm in your authentic choices despite criticism or pressure to conform? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if our journey resonated with you, please subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need encouragement to trust their own vision. Thank you for being part of our story today, and remember that your authentic path, however unconventional it might seem to others, holds unique value and potential that only you can bring to the world.